will see Anthony Broome right now, Michigan Wolverines coverage for the Wolverines on 3, part of the On 3 Sports Network. Anthony T. Broome on Twitter. Broome, how you doing, my friend?
What up, Ant?
I'm doing well. I'm in basically what looks like an airport hangar underneath Lucas Oil Stadium right now. So, yeah, we're got a couple minutes till Jim Harbaugh does his breakaway session, but nothing to talk about here, really. Just kind of a mundane couple days.
Hey, one of the things, before we get to all that other stuff, just the conversation we were having, Jim Harbaugh said earlier today that J.J. McCarthy is a generational type quarterback. And I think everybody goes into a tizzy when they hear that. But if you look back at Michigan's quarterbacks, I mean, he might not have the stats, but talent-wise, he's as good as they've ever had. Is that off base?
I don't think so. I mean, from a pure talent, dual threat type of perspective, I mean, I think you could argue maybe their most talented player at that position since Drew Henson. From a playmaking perspective, I mean, he's not quite as electric as like a Denard Robinson was, but Denard couldn't throw the football. So, he's got the big arm. He can move. He's mobile. Again, I mean, when you start, you bring up the names Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. Like, those guys are unicorns. So, like, I tap the brakes on that. A little bit of a hyperbole and coach speak on his part. But, yeah, in terms of what Michigan's had, just using it as the bar is what Michigan has had. I think there's still just so much more to unlock with what he can do. So, generational for Michigan, but generational, we'll see about that.
Anthony, I think he's using the Sean Payton school of getting his players motivated today. I think that's what he was choosing to do. With Michigan, with all the distraction, how much do you think the distraction of what's going on with the 4-game suspension, the negotiation of that suspension, and other things off the field, how much do you think that'll affect Michigan starting off this season, getting going? Because this could be a national championship run.
Yeah, honestly, the fact that it could just be like a 4-game suspension and not, he's gone for the first month of the season, I think that's a big distinction here because – September is, you round into form in the later months, but September is really where you build that callus and you build that identity of what your team's going to be, the bones of what your team might wind up being. So, Harbaugh, if this suspension goes through, again, it looks like it's headed that way, but nothing's final yet. I'm not super worried about how it will affect things because it's going to cover the non-conference, which is 3 cupcakes again, and then you come out and play Rutgers in week 1. So week 1 of that Big Ten season. So yeah, I think very highly of the player leadership they have and the coaching staff that's around him. So at this point, from my perspective, you almost just kind of eat it and move on from there.
Hey, Anthony, what was Jim Harbaugh's demeanor today? Because he's going to get to the podium. He's going to be asked about it. He was asked about it. Didn't say much, but it sounded like he would like to. What was his body language and everything else that goes along with it? Was he fired up about that topic?
I don't know, fired up. I mean, we've seen him fired up before, and kind of, he'll go off on his rants and his tangents. But for him, I think the fact that he didn't say, hey, I'm with you, I would love to just disclose what happened and talk about this and work through it because the things that they're accused of are so frivolous. We're talking about burgers and watching guys do push-ups on Zoom. And I know that there's that grade 1 violation of, not being truthful with the NCAA or being misleading with the NCAA. Again, I just think he wants to get it over with. So my understanding is that was a leak that came from the NCAA. Michigan was not aware that would drop this week, and how convenient it drops right before he speaks twice to the media in the span of a few days. But yeah, I get I get the sense he just wants to put it behind him too, because again, it is just it's not a distraction that it could derail your season, but it's a distraction the same way that like a mosquito buzzing around your face would be.
Talking to Anthony Broome on Twitter at Anthony T. Broome, writes for Michigan Wolverines coverage at the Wolverine on 3. Anthony, speaking of Ohio State, Ryan Day had mentioned that he thinks there should be consideration for the game to be moved, Michigan and Ohio State. What was Jim Harbaugh's take on that and your thoughts? How is that received at Big Ten Media Day?
Yeah, I mean, I won't say that he laughed it off or anything like that, but I think Michigan's perspective is that, hey, play it on September 1st, play it on the last weekend in November. It doesn't really matter. Like, they don't feel like it takes away from that rivalry. Now, from my perspective, I think that if you're looking at a chance where they could play 2 weeks in a row or potentially as many as 3 times in a single season, I think I think they should be open to that discussion to do that. But from a Michigan perspective, they'll play it whenever it's played. They're happy to do it where it is now. Actually, from what I've been told, I think Michigan would like to keep that on that last weekend of the year, but they'll play it whenever, and it's not nearly as big as a consideration as apparently it is down in Columbus.
Hey, Anthony, a quick question. Everybody makes so much about the offense, and obviously all Michigan fans are excited because Blake Corum came back, Donovan Edwards is back, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The defense doesn't get talked about enough for me, and I think defense could be the strong suit for Michigan this year. Talking about Junior Colson, talking about Will Johnson. I know Ryan Ermanni is excited about his growth sports stuff. So talk about that defense and how good they could be this season for me, please.
Yeah, I like the depth there. I think through the transfer portal, they were able to augment, the linebacker position. You were able to bring in a body at cornerback. I feel like on the back end, in that back seven, they have a chance to be a little more athletic, a little more versatile in how they can mix things up back there. That defensive line, the edge guys, I think the depth there is probably a little bit better than it was last year. Defenses, so much gets talked about the offense and opening up the offense and how that affects the outlook. But, they lost that TCU game because they couldn't get one or two stops they needed to get themselves, over the hump in the second half of that game. So I think that's a challenge that Michigan has taken on. I think the defensive guys are kind of fired up to show that they've put that behind them. And like I said, I feel like just from a physicality and from an athleticism perspective, I think that they're in as good a shape on that side of the ball as they have been under Jim Harbaugh.
Anthony, I wouldn't be doing my job, I apologize, if I didn't ask about my nephew, Micah Pollard, second year will linebacker coming in. How's Mike up there doing, and what are the chances that he can be one of those pieces you talk about depth in terms of blitzing off the edge this season?
Yeah, I know they like him. They like Micah Pollard a lot. Like I said, the depth in that room has gotten, a little bit more with, you bring in Ernest Hausman from Nebraska, and obviously juniors there, and Mike Barrett came back, and Jimmy Rolder's in that group as well. So, I think they like those guys a lot. They like all of them. And when you talk about, a defensive coordinator and Jesse Minter, who likes to bring pressure from a lot of different areas, I think we might see a little bit more of that from the linebackers this year because they are so deep in that position, and you can kind of rotate those guys in and out and keep them fresh. So fall camp gets going on August 2nd. We'll see what the depth chart starts to look like from there, but Micah Pollard's a guy that they like a lot.
Anthony, I got two for you. First one is, who do you think will run the team for the 4 weeks that Jim will be absent?
Well, I think, assuming that it's just a game suspension, I think it will still be Jim Harbaugh. But on Saturdays, now Sherrone Moore and Grant Newsome might get that 1-game suspension as well. So you're probably looking at Mike Hart, leading the way on that first Saturday, and then it probably gets turned over to Sherrone Moore from there, at least, as far as game day prep goes. But like I said before, as long as this is just a suspension of games and not being away from the team for a month, Jim Harbaugh and that process is going to kind of continue to be what it normally would be. Just Saturdays will look a little bit different.
Hey, the Big Ten's got a little bit some bad pub going on, especially with Northwestern, and now you hear PJ Fleck at Minnesota. What are their contingents at the Big Ten conference right now in Indy? Have you heard anything about what they're doing? Have you heard anything from their coaching?
Yeah, I'm not sure from a conference perspective. I mean, they're taking the issue seriously. Obviously, Northwestern's was dealt with the way it was. PJ Fleck, it kind of seems like, again, I don't know a ton about what they're accused of there, but PJ took the podium earlier and kind of, bullet point by bullet point explained what happened and why, the accusations against them for some of the stuff they're accused of is frivolous as well. So, yeah, it's I know the conference is aware of these allegations and especially there's a lot going on with the gambling too. Iowa's got a gambling scandal going on. That's another consideration. So, but it seems like the Big Ten is pretty in tune with this and will support the institutions, however they can and, making sure everyone's following the rules.
Hey, PJ Fleck, supposedly one of the things that he made his team do was clap for him as he was coming on the field. And if he didn't like the ovation that they gave him, he would go back in the tunnel and come back out and have the team clap for him again. I mean, and then there's the Fleck Bank. You have to. There's so much stuff going on with that guy. They call him like I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, that's the key word. I think if he could be accused of and tried for anything, it's the fact that he is exceptionally weird. I think in a lot of ways, maybe even more so than Jim Harbaugh in some ways, because of the self-referential stuff. But I don't know what's going to happen there. He came prepared. I mean, he had the prepared statement. He had bullet points. I thought he was going to give a PowerPoint up there with kind of fighting all this stuff off. But interesting times. Out there in the Big Ten West.
Shocking. The guy that says row the boat is a little bit off.
Yeah.
Shocking.
Good stuff. Anthony, we appreciate your time, man. From the depths of Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. Follow Anthony on Twitter at Anthony T. Broome. And, of course, check out his Michigan coverage for On 3 at the Wolverine On 3. Thanks so much, Anthony. Appreciate it, bud.
See you, bud.